Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond the Label podcast. I'm Leanne, your host, and I'm now in London with Mizuki Nishiyama, and she's a mixed Japanese artist now based in London. And as you can see, we're really cozy with like our warm drinks and our heated blanket to keep ourselves warm. So I'm very excited to know all about your artistic journey and everything that brought you to this moment. Do you want to just like tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from and like how long you've been doing arts for?
Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. I usually introduce myself as a mixed Japanese artist. My dad's Japanese. My mom's originally from Hong Kong, but they've always been based in Italy. So it's a bit complicated in terms of identity. I grew up in Hong Kong, went to Canadian school, and then I went to New York. And then now I live in London, but I bounce around quite often. I think I'll be spending more time back in Italy as well. But what I do is basically, I'm an artist. I'm primarily a painter, but I do also sculpture, as you can see. Sculpture, tapestries. Also recently dabbled into performance art. Yeah, and I think that a lot of my themes have to do with femininity, the sociopolitics of traditional versus contemporary Japan, trauma, violence, Shintoism, which is an animist religion based in traditional Japan. It's one of the main religions. It's all about nature. It's about transcending the essence of humanity, its life, its death, everything. And as an artist, as a woman, I respond to all that basically. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like first of all you cover a lot in your art, and just from hearing like about your background, like you come from so many different places. Like how does all of that inspire your art? Because obviously you mentioned about like the Japanese side of it, but you like being in London, having lived in like the US, in Europe and Italy, like how does that all come together? I'm just so curious.
I think that growing up, it's always been very fragmented. I think that is a perfect word to describe it because whether it is changing the way how you feel about yourself, how you interact with the external world. So this is one of the philosophies that I really, integrate within my work. It's called uchi-soto, which is inside outside. It's all about the internal and the external, basically. And it's a very Japanese way of looking at life. And I think that being able to piece together, regardless of where you are, culture, people, mannerisms, energy, every single city has its own energy. And I think that being able to take the best out of each place and concoct it yourself is what personalization is. Because at the end of the day, I don't fit into these categories anyways. So being able to make your own identity, it's the whole essence of what being a third culture kid is about, I guess. Yeah.
I love that so much, and I feel like, I mean, I resonate a lot with that, and I feel like the audience will also resonate a lot because it's really hard, and it's really like being a third culture kid, we belong to like a very specific category of people in society. Like, I personally feel like even making friends who have a similar background is harder than maybe someone coming from like a single like cultural background. Yeah. So how do you navigate that? Like living in so many different places. Like, do you mind sharing maybe some of like the struggles that you've overcome and like how you overcome them?
Yeah, I feel like definitely loneliness becomes one of the bigger problems. Being able to have the courage to start from scratch is terrifying, honestly. But each move that I've done, and it comes with very distinctive decision making, things that happened in the back that, I guess really pushed me to be in the situation where I ended up. It all has to come with passion But like anything, when you start relocating and starting fresh, yes, there's opportunities for so much growth, so much more new things to blossom. But at the same time, you're also stuck with your own humanity. It's just you yourself, just myself, I, and often I think that you're stuck with your own thoughts, and sometimes you might be even questioning why you made the decision to do certain things. Because I'm away from family, I've missed funerals, I've missed anniversaries, weddings, and gatherings, and sometimes it's difficult. And yeah, these thoughts creep up again. I definitely am having those thoughts at the moment. I'm rethinking about what I want to do next, and it's difficult, because being an artist, you don't have a 9 to 5. You're not going to get promoted. You're not going to, you make your own community of people. You make everything, which is both very empowering and exciting, which is why I love it. But at the same time, it's very individualistic. If it's not up to you, then it's stagnant.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with it? You make the most out of it.
What would you say is your main drive to, like, say, even like be here in London?
I guess ultimately I'm figuring out my humanity. To be an artist and to create, its sole purpose is to make sense of the world. And obviously there's a lot that gets thrown at us, whether it's losses, trauma, confusion. We are struck with so many things on a daily basis. And I think that art is a very safe way for one to come to terms with these things. Also in a very fun way, using different materials, and, the whole different aspect of materiality is, a whole different story. For example, like utilizing what the flatness of a painting represents, and in comparison to like sculpture or something, why an artist creates certain decisions. It's very scattered, but like I said, it's this whole empowering feeling. I guess I'm driven by the fact that life is very limited. And I am determined to kind of make the most out of it and figure out how to live my best life, how to treat myself better. And, often people say that my works are very dark or something, which I'm not going to disagree, but they're just life. It's just, it is what it is. It's authentic. It's a response to different things. At the end of the day, whether or not I can make a living off of my art or not, that's not the point. I will still be an artist. I will create every single day, whether or not they collect dust, under my bed or whatever it is. It's the urgency of creating, the urgency of, like, it's needed to be done. Of course, some people are like, oh, is it really needed? Yes, it's needed. And that's why I believe in it so much that I dedicate my life to being an artist. Yeah.
I love that so much, because I do agree in the sense that, like, everyone's an artist. We create one way or the other, like, every single day, even like unconsciously. And it's just so beautiful. It's like such a beautiful representation of life. Like, if you say, like, what, like, some work are like more dark, some work are like more like light or like happy, I feel like that's just life, right? Like, there's like the dark and the light in life, and it's all like beautiful in the whole. So
it's yin and yang.
Yeah.
I used to always mention that there's an idea in Japanese called the ura, which is the underneath, the shadow. But I realized that's literally the same translation as yin and yang. You need a balance of both. And I think that in a lot of cultures, whether it's, I guess I had some works that were very blatantly about death. And I think that in my Chinese side, they felt a little uncomfortable by this confrontation of death kind of coming into this almost like purified realm that we live in. It's sacred, and we need to divide, life and death. And this division became something that was unsettling to me.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of cultures, death has always been there.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm obsessed with death, for example, or obsessed with the deviant, but I think by inhabiting the body of a woman's, like, my female body is already a deviation. And I think that with added on personal experiences, being an Asian woman in the West, there's so many different things that puts me on a different course.
Yeah.
that makes me angry, lonely, and also, ultimately empowered to really tap into that. And that's where that whole, like, I guess, like you said, the drive, that's where it comes from, to find your place.
I personally feel that's amazing. Like, because like life is all about like the ups and downs. If there's no going down, there's no going up, right? Like, even I think as like a spiritual person, we need to experience like pain and like suffering in order to know the joy. And I can kind of like see that in your art too. Like, yeah, and I think that's just beautiful. And I want to tap more into like, because you obviously portray so much of like your like femininity and those concepts into your art. Can you just like tell us a little bit more about like why do you want to focus on that?
I guess that as I get older and become more settled in this body, I'm born a woman, I have female organs, and I think that there are certain experiences, culturally, socially, politically, biologically, that only a female body bearing person would experience, obviously. And I guess it all comes down to like experiencing whether it's injustices or feeling again lost, because if you don't have that kind of trigger, I guess it's not something that you'll be aware of. I wish we could go every day without realizing certain aspects of ourselves, but there are divisions in terms of gender, sex, religion, personality, traits, characteristics. Everything is divided.
Yeah.
And I think that as human beings, we strive to be accepted. We're like species that want to be, we're very community driven. But we're also very ambitious creatures, especially in the modern age, to stand out, to be impressive, I think it's this constant battle of tapping into my feminine energy, my issues that only concern my feminine biological health, that concern my sex, that concern because I am a woman, that certain experiences were had. And it's my way of deconstructing it. Perhaps sometimes you're not going to get an answer, it's not like I'm asking some kind of portal and asking for answers. While I'm working through it, whether it's on canvas, on whatever it is, memories, visions, feelings start to kind of fill up, and it's through these like very metaphysical and also abstract notions that you start deconstructing what it is that's happening. And I guess piece by piece you start finding like catharsis within it. And I guess that's the power of what art has to offer.
I feel like, I mean, obviously I'm not so much an artist, but what I'm hearing, it's kind of similar to like how like I do journaling. So it's just making sense of emotions and making sense of feelings and just expressing it in a way that makes sense to you.
Exactly. I mean, I've always wanted to be a poet. I still write. I'm not a great writer though. They're kind of like word salads, to be honest, just like lacking of rhythm and meter and whatever it is. It's very conventional. But when you're able to, because the alphabet, language is concrete in a way. It's malleable, but you have certain things to kind of really utilize. Like you have the alphabet, you have stanzas, you have different stuff like that. And through poetry, I was able to kind of really just throw up everything that was on mine that perhaps maybe art couldn't be able to pinpoint. So I don't really publicize like share my works, like my literary works, just because it's just so brutally honest and personal. I feel so naked.
Yeah.
But when I do, I guess, write in a way, journal, you feel immense relief.
Yeah, no, I love that. Because essentially, as humans, I think that's what we need to do. And a lot of times we forget about it because even just me being in Hong Kong, like living in a big city, no one really talks about this. And everyone's so focused on like building their careers and making money. And no one really focus on like self-expression anymore. And I think it's quite nice that like we're here today, like we're here in your, I guess, like studio / apartment and like talking about this.
Yeah I think Hong Kong is a special place for me. It's always going to be home. I feel very Hong Kong as well as very Japanese, but well, I mean, you're not gonna have it all, but also people come and go because people are what make the city, the country, what it is. And my experience, like I guess growing up there, was very particular and different than what it would be as an adult and back as an artist trying to engage within the art community, the art industry, and all that. But I do sense a lot of strain in the Hong Kong society. And I guess that ultimately what I really want to do is to really advocate for certain things that I believe in and enrich arts and culture in Hong Kong, you know, from being abroad, from having my education and experiences as an artist and, you know, researcher, whatever, you know, that entails. Like, I want to be able to adapt it to the place that kind of made me who I am.
Yeah.
From like, you know, what do you call, like roots, you know, my roots basically.
As a third culture kid, what do you see are like the major differences in, say, like the East and the West, especially now that you're an artist? Like, do you see the differences in people's response to your work?
I think that at the end of the day, it's all about human engagement. You know, like when I want to voice something, whether literally or through an expression of art, you know, as a woman, as a human, you don't want your voice to feel like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or feel blocked. And it's not like I've suffered or encountered like certain situations that were, you know, just straight on like it's been pushed away, but it's a collection of small experiences and microaggressions, I guess, in a way that makes me feel like that I feel a little constrained in certain ways in Asia. But also, you know, obviously there's constraints in the West as well. I think the biggest thing is that I need to represent the East while I'm in the West. And somehow, it's like, for example, like being Japanese, I started feeling very Japanese when I moved to New York, weirdly enough.
Okay.
It was my first time actually finding a community of, you know, mixed Japanese individuals and also, you know, Japanese people that have moved to the States. And I started, I guess, like getting in touch with my roots, ancestry, food, language, you know, all of that. It's a similar thing, you know, when I'm in the West, I really want to tap into these stories and things that make up me, ideas, these philosophies. And when I'm in the East, I guess I try to integrate all of that together. Obviously, Hong Kong, you know, the East is extremely westernized in so many different aspects, but, you know, I guess it's like tapping into different parts of yourself that you've developed in different places and wanting to be heard.
I love how you use the word integrate, and because at the very beginning of the pod, you talked about being fragmented, and I just like how those two things come together.
Yeah.
Because eventually, what I guess like what we as humans want to do is just to be whole. I do resonate with like living in different places can feel like, you know, you have like, for me, I have like my Hong Kong self, like my London self, and how do I put those pieces together? So I feel like that's like, for me, it's like my journey. And I think maybe for you as an artist, do you think your art and your artistic journey actually help with that?
For sure. I mean, art is a way to extend yourself, extend culture, extend mindset, and all of that. And it gives me like strength, I guess, in a way, confidence. It's a crutch. But yeah, it's a little cliche, but I can kind of recall like when I was much younger and being able to use art as a safe haven. And, you know, I guess that no wonder, like, you know, art therapy works very well with kids. Why children at a young age might, you know, seek comfort and find a practice in some kind of art making. Whether it's music or theater or drawing, to kind of, in a way, let them know that they're on the right track. It's a very meditative and also forgiving craft or practice.
That's lovely. I've never really dabbled into like art therapy, but I feel like it can be very like therapeutic. Honestly, like even having this conversation with you is quite therapeutic for me. You know, just like understanding like your perspective and just how another human being like think, you know, that's really nice. And I want to like ask a little bit more about like what is the process actually of you creating your art? Like does it come with like a feeling and you just want to, oh, I need to create something right now, or you have like a planning process? Because I've had different types of like artists come on the pod, like fashion designer and then musicians, and it's just so interesting to learn about how each person has their own different process.
Right, yeah. I would say that I'm a very volatile artist. I think you can tell from the artworks, like, some of the works that we have around us are very, like, I guess, aggressive in terms of texture, in terms of material. I think things have shifted a little bit ever since I did my tapestry series. It was a very research heavy and ritualistic process where I incorporated my ancestral soil, which all my ancestors have been buried in since the 1400s. And with a lot of military history, a lot of, I guess, masculine energy and violence embedded within that soil, I really wanted to, I guess, explore the identity of being a mixed Japanese woman, getting in touch with ancestry, culture, trauma, and being able to weave, no pun intended, weave through all of that. And that became a very like slow, research heavy project where literally I use like elements of the world, like for example, burning all the fabrics, burying it for 6 months, pulling it back out, soaking it in Japanese teas, drying it, and then using traditional methods called sashiko and boro, where I broke the fabrics, rocks, knives, whatever it was, graters, sewed them all by hand again. I would say that that experience offered me a much more slow process. While as a painter, it has always been very like volatile, as is like I always described it as a vomit. It's not very pleasant sounding, but obviously it's when you vomit, you kind of regurgitate everything that is stuck inside and you release it at once. So it's almost like an incision being slashed, or like pouring everything at once that you have into something. It's very filled with life to the capacity that, you don't want to hold yourself back.
Yeah.
And that's the liberation there is that goes with it. So my process depends on how I'm working through certain issues, I guess, in my life. My work is very deeply personal. So the progress of the works are actually a bit like literally it's quite invasive in a way.
Right.
But I'm documenting the entire journey of it. Sometimes you can see how it has gotten, very, very dark. And perhaps that could be reflective of certain experiences and moments in my life. And sometimes it's very experimental. You can see that I'm trying out new things. I'm very open to new things, and maybe sometimes it's looking very conservative and very like controlled. I had a good friend who has followed my work for quite some time, and he mentioned that your work is feeling very constricted in the series. And based on my life situation at that moment, I really was, I guess, constricted at some point, physically, mentally. It was also during COVID. A lot of things are quite transparent, to be honest. It's being able to dissect this language, because it's a whole different language, and that's why it's liberating. Whether it's, it doesn't matter. Being able to speak, I grew up with multiple languages, but, I don't feel like I can really be fluent, in any of them. And by fluent, I don't mean like being able to handle, grammar or language structure. I mean being able to connect like spiritually, analytically, and embody all of those things through the method that you're using to communicate. And I guess that through painting, it was like the right balance. Writing, like I mentioned, was a bit too transparent for me. Maybe it's because I couldn't like control the tools well enough. Again, everything's very much fragmented. It's how do you connect everything?
Yeah. I actually have a question, because you mentioned how your work is so personal to you and it really is like a documentation of what you're going through. And since you do sell your work, do you feel like whoever like buys your work, like you're kind of like giving a little bit piece of yourself to the buyer or like wherever your work is hanged.
Yes, of course.
How does that feel? You know, just like asking as a non-artist.
In the beginning, I was hesitant, but at the same time, as an educator, I guess it's a feeling of being able to chip a part of yourself and share it with somebody. I mean, it sounds very narcissistic as if like what you have to offer is like so important and somebody needs to have it or something. But I mean, I find value in my own life. I make my own value, and it's on a plate for whoever finds it may be useful for them to also, in a way, like brush upon or just keep with them. It doesn't have to be forever, but things come and go, memories come and go. Everything is not, in a way, like solid. And I think we're just always so fixated on permanence. And that's a lot of my downfalls, my anxiety comes from that as well. But being able to let go and being able to share in a way like alleviates a lot of that burden. I would like people to have the parts that made me proud to say those are characteristics that I hold, even though people say that, okay, this is a dark topic, but at the end of the day, that's not all it is, because I wouldn't be just sadistically regurgitating things over and over again. Perhaps there were moments like that, but my works that I share, almost all of them have some kind of light, and always this light and dark, like we mentioned. And so I guess it's a sense of power. There's a word called omamori in Japanese. It's kind of like an amulet. It's like a blessing, whether it's the type of material I was using specifically for like my ink stuff over there, mulberry paper. I guess the mulberry fruit, the mulberry leaf was something that was very integral to me recovering certain things. And, the connotation of it being, a superfood and something that kind of brought me back to health and to life. Being able to take that material and also paint on that material, it just exudes life and exudes positivity in a way. And I would assume that if you're an art collector that needs some kind of support in some sort of way in their life, hearing that and feeling that sense of energy within the works, I mean, I would want to have something that could give me a bit of a boost, in a way. Yeah, I guess it's finding what works for you.
I feel like this is so spiritual, actually, because I like before coming to this conversation, I wasn't expecting like a spiritual conversation, because I've had other like spiritual workers on the podcast who talk about like philosophies and like life and death, and now I guess I'm actually I feel like I learned quite a lot, even just in like the past 30 minutes, of how therapeutic and spiritual art can be. And that's just wow. Like I feel like a lot of audience listening, maybe who's not so much into arts before, now have found some new like resonance with art. Yeah. And before we finish, first of all, do you have anything else that you want to share or you want to add?
I guess that, we're constantly on a learning journey, and it's not that I have anything figured out, but so far it seems like I found bits and pieces that have helped me along the way, or maybe they're just crutches for me to kind of utilize to make situations more bearable. But that's part of the journey. And I guess that, I hope everyone can find healthy alternatives and ways to support themselves, because it's a marathon, not a race. I keep telling myself that, but I know that's something that I really need to work on. But it's so true, logically and also just like mentally and physically, everything.
I resonate with that so much.
Let's just take our downtime.
Wow. No, exactly. Like, because like before this recording, we were just talking about how we see a lot of people in their 20s and their 30s, and there just feels like so many like steps that we need to hit to fit like what society expects of us. And I think it's just a really nice reminder that we can just take our damn time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And before we finish, I asked everyone the same question to end. Can you share with us one thing that you love about yourself?
Oh, what I love about myself.
Yeah.
I think that there is something very intense about myself, as in, like, I guess in a way it's very obsessive, but if I'm gonna do something or commit to something, it's like 300%. It's like this devotion to whatever. And I guess my theory is that, I want to live as authentically as I can. And I'm somebody that sticks to their values very strongly. I'm very open to anything. But I think that if I'm going to, do whatever it is, I want intention to be, very much illuminated. Because I'm only living for myself. And I really want to make this life, this experience, as memorable and like no regrets as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's actually takes a lot of courage. Now that I'm like hearing this, I feel like everything that you've shared, like you prioritizing yourself and fighting for your passion and making decisions to move to the places that you've lived in. Like that's something very courageous, and I'm just so happy for you. Yeah, because I think that a lot of people have these dreams, and everyone talks about like no regrets, but it's really takes a few people to actually act on it, and I think it's just amazing that you're doing it. Like even when it comes with like the flip side of starting over, being lonely, making new friends, but like the reward is just so great. Like the possibility of what can come.
I think that's what it is. It's hope, I think we'll be nothing without hope.
Yeah.
And hope, yes, is a privilege, but you also really need to pave the way for hope for yourself. And yeah, I hope we all have this feeling, that can really push us to be the best versions of ourselves. Because what else can we do,
Yeah,
what are you gonna do?
Literally.
What are you gonna do? Be the worst version of yourself.
Yeah. No, that is so true. Okay, I love everything that you shared today, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, before we officially end, where can the audiences find you, like your Instagram, or if you have like a website or anything?
Yes, just my name, www.mizukinishiyama.com. Yeah.
Okay.
My work's there.
Well, thank you so much, and feel free to check out Mizuki's work, and we'll talk to you guys soon.